Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started with today's session. Thank you so much for joining our Time to Act Mental Health Echo. If you've not taken a minute, please put your name and contact information into the chat. If you're willing to turn on your video, that's always helpful to us to know who's on the call and where we're all at. We are recording today's session, so it is stored on our Canvas page. If you want access to our Canvas page, you can reach out to Time to Act at aggies.usu.edu, and we will get you access to that Canvas page. Again, we love that interactive community here of Echo. So please put your contact information into chat, ask your questions, turn on your camera, any way that we can get to know each other over Zoom. I know that's always a hard thing to do, but if we were in person, we'd all be gabbing and chit-chatting away. So trying to replicate that over Zoom. We also do case narratives, and a case narrative is a great way to get information about cases that are either tough or that you want some help and support with from all these amazing people on the call. So if you want to, or you are interested, reach out to us and we'll get you set up for doing a case narrative discussion, breakout groups, whatever you want to call it. We do talk about sensitive topics during these echoes. So please always remember to de-identify any information. Don't use their first, middle, or last names, where they're from, where they work. If you have any questions, you can reach out to a hub member. They all have an asterisk in front of their name, so they're easier to find in chat. If you've never joined an Echo session, welcome to your first one, and hopefully we'll see you on many more. We always have 3 pieces of an Echo session. We will always have a speaker. We will always have a case presentation where we then provide feedback. You all provide the feedback and resources and recommendations. And then as well as just trying to get to know each other on the call. So for instance, when Heather Waters says something really amazing on the call or during the breakout session, I know that I can then reach out to her at the Department of Health Baby Watch and ask some follow-up questions. And so it's just another way to get to know everybody throughout the state that does some of the same things that we do, and we don't feel like we're alone out there. Renaming your profile is, again, just a way to know who is on the call, who's answering or asking those questions. You can raise your hand throughout today's session. Kurt Phillips is monitoring the chat for us, so he will make sure that your questions get answered. We're going to leave some time at the end to answer questions, but you can always put those in throughout today's session. Pre-registration, you can do that. You can also email timetoact@aggies.usu.edu if you have any questions or want access to our Canvas page. In order to get that credit of attendance, we do ask that you fill out the survey. The survey will be dropped out in today's, oh my gosh, let me say that sentence again. The survey link will be dropped into chat throughout today's session, and as well as at the end of an email that goes out after the session is completed. We mail out those certificates once a month. And again, the survey needs to be completed in order to get it. We do thank everybody who does those surveys. Those surveys are what we take back to our funding agency to show the impact that we have by doing these echoes. So we thank you all for filling those out and completing those. Again, Canvas is where we store everything. So if you want access to our Canvas page, just send us an email. and we will get you registered for that. Another plug for case studies. Again, a case study can be anything, any clients that you're working with, families. If you don't want to speak and tell those, present that, we can also present that for you. So please reach out to Time to Act at aggies.usu.edu and we will get set up for that. We have a new Facebook group, and that is a way to just continue the discussions after today's session. It's a way to maybe, again, like I said, Heather, you're on my screen, so you're my guinea pig today that I'm calling on. That, you know, when Heather said something, I can then do some follow up with her if I also wanted everybody else on the call to know about that. So consider joining our Facebook group. We do have social media where we post things that we receive from others, that we're talking about our sessions. So if you've not done that, take a minute to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. I'm thrilled today to have Jess present for us. And so I'm going to stop sharing and turn the time over to her.
Thanks, Janelle. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm Jess Holzbauer. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I work for the University of Utah. I manage our adolescent day treatment program, Teen Scope. Some of you may have had familiarity with it. I've been a therapist for the last 15 years, worked in mental health for the last 20 or so. And I spend a lot of time talking with families about how to navigate social media with their children and their adolescents. And so I'm going to talk today about a roadmap for to help parents navigate social media conversations with their children. I just want to make sure that people are seeing the right screen because I've got two screens up. Are folks seeing the big screen that says a roadmap for parents, or are they seeing the little screen that has my notes?
We're seeing the screen that has your notes.
Which is not what I want people to see because that probably won't be as helpful. So one moment, please. Let's see if I can get yes?
Yes. Yep. That's the
Wonderful.
one.
Okay. Great. Thank you for the feedback. I really appreciate it. And also, I mean, folks, I work with adolescents and kids. I'm interrupted constantly. And so usually when I talk to adults, I'm like, I don't even know how to talk to adults. They're like attentive, they listen. And so please help me feel comfortable by interrupting. If you have questions, please ask them. I would really love if this could be interactive, or if I say something, you're like, wait, I'm not sure if that makes sense, or I have a question about that, please ask, and I would love to answer that. I really hope this can be helpful for folks. Um, so social media. So just to give us a little bit of a lay of the land, when there's a lot of different ways to define social media. For our purposes today, I'm going to talk about the five that are most frequently used by adolescents. I won't necessarily be talking about things like Roblox or Discord, which are obviously have a chat function to them. That's a whole nother animal. But I'm really going to be talking about YouTube, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook. And I think sometimes it's surprising that that YouTube is actually, and it's considered to be social media. I don't think that our adolescents would necessarily consider it to be social media, but it is interactive. And for anyone who works with adolescents, I think we know that TikTok, right, has just exploded. Does anyone have familiarity with why we've been concerned about TikTok in particular? Does anyone know the controversy with TikTok as it relates to mental health? TikTok in particular. Oh, Tony, did you unmute yourself?
I was wondering if it is because they're so the video clips are so fast, like where they're just like a short amount of time and it decreases our attention span.
So there's been some good investigative reporting about that, and then also about the algorithm, which is really closely guarded. But what we know is that there have been multiple case studies where a young person who maybe is experiencing some mental health issues, say depression, for example, may click on a video, but then what happens is that they're fed more and more and more videos in a higher concentration that can really lead down a wormhole. And so TikTok in particular is an app that we have a lot of concern about as related to mental health and just the way their algorithm works. So TikTok is that is the one that is most frequently used by adolescents, followed by Snapchat, Instagram. And I don't know if any of y'all who work with adolescents are like Facebook, that's for old people. Like my mom buys used chairs off of it. And you're like, okay, great. So 95% of adolescents are using a social media platform, and more than a third are saying they use social media almost constantly. So, I mean, the genie is out of the bottle, right? We are not living in a world where we can say, all right, kids, you can never use social media. It's bad. That is not what this conversation will be. So we know, I think probably many of you on this call have seen the Surgeon General's warning. And so we know that greater social media use, now, not all social media use, greater social media use is correlated with poor sleep, online harassment, body image issues, low self-esteem, and higher depressive scores. And we also know that our girls are more susceptible to having a decline in these mental health issues than boys. We're going to talk a little bit about why that might be. So what we see with girls is that the more that girls are on social media, they are more likely to view image-based content. So the studies indicate that girls are more likely to be looking at like pictures of friends or like fashion content, where boys are more, and again, this is just what the research says, this is not what I'm saying. Boys are less likely to look at those kind of images. They're more likely to look at content related to like sports or activities. And so we know that there's a gender difference with that. And so by virtue of that, what we see is that the more time, not anytime, the more time that girls are on social media, the more likely they are to have a poorer self-image. So that doesn't mean that if girls are on social media, period, they're going to have a poor body image. The more they are on it increases the likelihood. So I want to be clear, not all social media is bad, right? So social media for our young people can give connection, especially if there's a special interest community. I work with a young person who is, I mean, like next level engaged in like a Pokemon card community. He's on the autism spectrum, and so really has like a group of enthusiasts that he connects with in this way that is really meaningful for him. And they're, trading information about cards and packs, and that's been really positive for him. Shared experiences can be related. Also, for folks who live in more rural areas, it can be a really nice way to find a community if they don't have it, in their actual physical community. And it can foster collaboration. It's really interesting for a lot of the teens that I work with. Even if they're collaborating on a school project, they're not texting each other. They're connecting, like they're snapping each other. They're like sharing their location on Snap, like, oh, okay, we're all headed to the library. It's really interesting. And we learn new information. We get alerts, weather updates, for better or worse. We're exposed to new products. Moment of truth, moment of vulnerability here, folks. If you would, please raise your hand. I'm going to see if I can see more people. Please raise your hand if you, a well-educated, smart, well-informed person, has been influenced on social media to buy a product or to investigate a product. Yeah, right. So we are also influenced. So this is not just kids, right? And again, not all social media is bad. Now, probably like that impulse buy I bought for my dog, like we had matching sweatshirts. I probably didn't need that from social media. But that's arguable. Depends on who you ask. Okay, oh, so the adolescent brain development, this is why we're really concerned about adolescents in particular. So when we think about this social learning model, right, that adolescents are getting input in to help kind of shape their their identity within the community. So, for example, if they are part of an environment in which being, an artist is really cool, then they're more likely to post information about their artwork or talk to people about artwork or be validated for their artwork. So that is an example of like the social learning model. Like I do this, you all validate it. I do more of this, right? It's transactional. And so what we know is that for young people, they have not yet developed, by no fault of their own, right? It's just their brain. They've not yet developed logical reasoning and engage in emotional reasoning to help shape their identity and their social persona. So whereas all of us who are, I'm just going to assume we're all semi well adjusted, individuals. For all of us, if we are getting feedback from an environment that we're in, maybe it's a new social group or maybe it's a new environment that we're in that's in conflict with who we are or our values, or we're being like pushed kind of outside of what is important to us, we can logic that out and pull back. Adolescents, again, by no fault of their own, just simply do not yet have that ability. It's not yet developed. So we can't rely on the adolescent brain to kind of filter out some of the validation that they are receiving or what they're being exposed to. They just simply do not have that capability yet. They are high on emotions, right? You all know, right? Like the saying, they're like Ferraris, right? All gas, no brakes. We all know that saying. So we know that teen girls, again, are hyper vulnerable to physical parameters, and they also attach value of self to the validation of appearance. We know that that is more likely for girls again than for boys. So I'm saying all of this just to lay the foundation about, okay, now what do we do, right? So kids are susceptible, emotional reasoning, we all got that. So when we think about what is normal social awareness in development, okay, so let's think about this. So what do kids care about? Let's just, if people would, if they're feeling bold and brave, unmute and just throw out some things that like, what do kids want to be known for? Like, or what validates them? I'm going to say social status, their athletic ability. What else?
Number of followers.
Number of followers. I have that on here somewhere. What else?
Appearance.
Appearance.
If you have the new Jordans, those are pretty sweet. So your style, your appearance, academic performance, depending on what social group you're in. What else? Your reputation. What do people say about you when you're not in the room? Likes and followers. So this is very real. Um, this is not just, I think sometimes that adults or parents who are not as savvy on social media will not put weight on, likes and followers the same way adults would. I have an Instagram account. It's private. I don't know. I've got a few friends that follow it. Like that doesn't matter to me at all. But I'm also not an adolescent, right? And if someone likes my photo that I posted of a Christmas tree, like I don't really care. But for kids, it makes a much bigger impact. Mentions as well. And there's a subtlety, right, to the comments or mentions that kids get in social media or on social media platforms. Like, for example, if a girl posts, a get ready with me, video, and someone puts 3 fire emojis versus 3 flower emojis, Do we know the difference with that? Do people know? Three fire is like, girl, you are killing it. You are hot to trot. Three flowers are like, oh, that's so cutesy. It matters to kids. I know that like it's like I'm like, oh, I wasn't trying to be cutesy. I was trying to be, sophisticated. So like this kind of stuff matters. So what does this mean? So adults have a responsibility to help young people become self-aware. So we've got all of this information coming in social media. It's coming in at all times. Kids have their phones. They're not getting on their computers for social media. They're on their phones. I have a lot to say about phones, but then what do parents do? So we're going to walk through some practical steps about how to manage social media. Then we're also going to talk about building an identity outside of social media. So I encourage parents to, first of all, understand the apps. The reality is that we are not smarter than the algorithms. And so I encourage parents like, hey, you might do a really nice job shaping um, behavior for your child out in the community, but the algorithm is going to outwork you. And so, for example, we'll have kids who start following accounts that may have like some more like risque, for example, like posts, and then that is what they're going to be fed. And so, not because they're necessarily choosing, but because that's what the algorithm does. So I really encourage parents to actually set up accounts on all these different apps, not like they're posting, but to understand how they work. Because a really quick way to shut down conversation with parents and kids is for parents to have to explain or kids to have to explain all this to parents. They're like, oh my gosh, like, you know, thanks, boomer. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, that does not help. I also encourage, and this is linked in the slides, there is a media plan that the American Academy of Pediatrics has put together, which I find to be extraordinarily practical because it's not, don't ever be on social media, don't ever watch TV. They talk about media, including, TV and whatnot, as a diet and not like restricting, but as like intentionally how much we're taking in, where and when. So I really encourage parents and teens to make that together because it actually fosters really good conversation. All of the kids in our day treatment program make that with their parents. I also encourage parents to have an honest conversation because the reality is that the relationship that adults have with social media is just it's very different than kids have. And there's a lot that adults just don't know and don't understand. So I really encourage parents to take a very curious and learners' minds when they are talking to their kids about their social media use. So for example, like why why do you care, what so and so, posts? Who is this person that you really think is cool? Like, what is it that they're posting that gives you that impression? So it's really like I really want to know because I'm really curious. Um, I also ask parents to model healthy media consumption and phone use because I cannot tell you how many family therapy sessions I've been in when kids and parents are having a disagreement specifically about how much time the kids get on their phone and they say to their parent like, well, you're on your phone constantly. Like I can't even have a conversation with you because I don't even know what you're doing. You're like on the couch looking at this. And it's like, yeah. So I try to ask parents to really model the kind of behavior that they want their kids to engage in. And so whether that means not looking at the phone when they're having a conversation, whether that means charging the phone, outside the room at night, whatever it is, I encourage them to model that. And I also ask kids and parents to explore privacy settings together. If I had it my way, and this is what I ask parents to do, is all teens would have private accounts because I, the majority of kids that I work with, especially the majority of girls that I work with, have had unwanted messages from adults come in through their social media. And if you think about that, right? If you have a child, you would never allow them to just have their bedroom door open and any stranger could walk in, right? Like that, I mean, that's crazy to think about, right? Like you would never allow anyone to just walk in off the street and into their bedroom. that is what is possible, right, with apps, unless we have some good privacy settings and security measures in place that anyone can access our children, which is really scary to think about. And so I really ask parents and kids just to have this conversation together, because usually if it's parents like, you're totally locked down, the kids are like, that's not what I want and that's not cool. I'm going to find a way around it. Kurt, I noticed that you're
Yes,
unmuted
yeah.
and yeah, I want
There's
to
just a
pause
couple
for
in
a
the
minute.
chat. There's a couple
Yeah,
of comments in the chat I was just going to point out.
yeah, please. Hmm.
So one of them
Should I
says,
look at?
my kids refuse to wear any shoes to school other than Converse or Nike when you're talking about image because they'll be made fun of. And I think we've all seen that with if we have kids in, especially in middle school. Middle school seems to be a little more nasty than the high school does. The other comment
Brutal.
was also to help parents understand that sometimes kids aren't intentionally trying to see or find themselves looking at certain content. The algorithm has its tricks and it targets their age group. Their child isn't trying to be malicious. So those are a couple of comments just went into chat.
100%. And I want to talk about that with building trust and openness, because there are so many times where kids will not because they were seeking it out, get exposed to content that is inappropriate for them. And I really ask parents like, hey, if your young person, your child, your adolescent brings this up to you, please do not be angry with them. Like, please do not. Ask them about it. Like, ooh, ask them how they felt. Ask them how they want to respond. Ask them, what how they decided to talk to me about it. And so it is so, so, so important that when kids are bringing something up, that parents are open, validating, and then helpful. For example, I mean, this is happening in real time. One of my patients is not here today. Literally, this is happening today because his sister unfortunately was messaged on Roblox yesterday. So just supplement Roblox with Instagram, whatever. We're talking about social media stuff. And anyway, was solicited by someone they thought was a child, another child, actually an adult, and that the person said, unless you send me nude photos, I'm going to fly a drone over your house and kill your family. A kid who was 9, right, who didn't understand all the nuance, was terrified and loves their family, and so sent nude photos. So they're at the police station. All right, my patient feels terrible. I mean, he's like the older brother, but like, what is he gonna do about it? And I would love in that situation, and I'm so grateful that the mom knows now, and the mom has responded like so wonderfully. In that situation, I so wish that the child would have been able to talk to their mom before they sent the photos, and for their mom to say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you let me know. I can imagine how uncomfortable, this must feel." So when kids bring up these situations, we really want parents to be neutral at worst, validating at best, and help them to not feel like they're in the wrong. So yeah, whoever said that in the chat, like, yes, spot on. And although wildly unpopular, I ask parents to put in parent controls. I just out of curiosity, again, I'm going to make the view bigger. Um, has anyone ever put parental controls on themselves on their own device? No, I have, and it's been fantastic. So whether it's I put in parental controls to limit the amount of time I've been on news apps, especially if I found that like I was, just like perseverating or going down wormholes. So it only would give me 20 minutes a day. Extraordinarily helpful so that I'm not just like wasting time. I've put controls on for when text messages can come in, when they can't come in. On the iPhone, you can also set it so that content is batched, so that rather than a kid getting pinged constantly with updates saved from Snapchat, we can batch it so it comes in once an hour or certain times of the day. And if we really, really want to make phones less enticing for kids, for any of you that have an iPhone, and forgive me, I'm not a master of all phones, but most kids use iPhones, and so I know a lot about iPhones. We have the ability to make our phones black and white, and without color, looking at content on our phones is extraordinarily boring. You go into your settings, you go to accessibility, you go to colors, and you change it to black and white. I would encourage all of you to take a look at that. I've had parents use that actually as a consequence for kids, and the kids are like so mad about it because they're like, this is so boring and terrible. And so the kids are like, the parents are like, hey man, I'm not taking your phone totally away, but I am going to limit how enjoyable this is, for you. Wildly unpopular, extraordinarily effective. And so I really encourage parents to use parental controls. Again, simply because, like I said before, not all social media is bad, but we want to reduce the amount of time that kids are on social media. So how long should kids be on social media a day? Does anyone have a great answer for this? Does anyone have a fantastic guideline that they use? The American Academy of Pediatrics has not put out a hard recommendation for adolescents. Obviously we know for, kids, especially age 3 and under, 5 and under, there's very clear guidelines. There's really not for adolescents. Yes, it definitely depends on the age. In general, I recommend to families that they limit like messaging and social media app use to no more than an hour a day and not during school time. Again, wildly unpopular, but here's the thing, right? So when we think about reducing harm for individuals, it's often not completely taking away the thing that could cause harm. So we're not saying to our kids, you can never ski, you can never drive a car, you can never ride a bike. What we do say is you can drive a car with seatbelts on and not after dark because you're 16 and you just learned how to drive. You can ski, but you're going to wear a helmet and you're going to go with someone because I know you like to go fast and are kind of wild. You can ride a bike, absolutely. You're going to ride a helmet and you're not going to ride in a heavily trafficked area. So when we think about, yes, we want you to do this thing, but we, as the adults, are going to put parameters around it because when there are parameters around it, that just means that you have less distance that you can travel metaphorically, right? And so I recommend to parents an hour total of messaging and app use. That doesn't work for every family. Some families are like, you know what? That doesn't work. We have this long commute, et cetera, et cetera. Fantastic. Do what works for you. Please do not allow kids to have phones in their room at night. What we know is that the pings that are going off wake kids up. It disturbs sleep. There's good research about that. And I also ask that parents set up non-negotiables as well. So a non-negotiable, for example, would mean no phones at the table, no phones in rooms overnight, no phones during school, for example, absolutely no phones while driving. So these are things that I want parents to set up that like, hey, I'm happy to negotiate if you want some more time on Saturday, but these are the things I will not negotiate on. Questions, comments before I keep going? Okay. So when I'm talking to parents and kids about thinking critically about social media content, so we're talking about limiting, we're talking about being thoughtful about what accounts we follow, what our privacy settings are. I also ask parents to beg these questions to their kids, like, okay, so you're following this super cool snowboarder dude who's like your age and goes to the winter school up in Park City and is training to be on the Olympic team. How do you feel when you see this content? Some kids might be like, dude, this kid's rad. I wish I was this kid. He's super cool. I'm like learning how to do tricks because he posts things. Other kids are like, well, I kind of feel like a piece of garbage because like I would love to be that kind of snowboarder and like I am stuck on blues. It's like, okay, so let's examine that. Do you want to keep looking at it and feeling this way? do you want to look at someone else? Oh, Kurt, kids give me such a hard time. I say a lot of things that apparently no one says anymore, but I don't know.
I think it's rad. I just hadn't heard that for a long time. It's cool.
I appreciate that. I also ask kids and parents to really just pause for a minute, take a step back, because I posit that when folks post things on social media, kids in particular, they're trying to sell or brand or communicate. I don't mean sell like actual commodity, right? So I'm not saying if, a boy posts like a picture of his cool new Jordans that he's trying to sell those Jordans. That's not what I'm saying. There's something that they are, okay, Tony, I'm glad you're with me, that they are trying to like sell, like an image. So I ask kids, okay, let's think critically about this. Like, why did this person post this? They didn't post a picture of their belt. They didn't post a picture of their t-shirt. Like, why did they post this? What are they trying to communicate? And then we turn it around. So when you post something, what are you trying to communicate? Let's just think about that. And for any of us who use social media, let's think about the last thing that you posted or something that you posted. What were you trying to communicate? Were you trying to communicate, um, ooh, I'm so fancy. Look at my nice clean countertops. Were you like, oh, right, or like, oh, I'm a very organized mom. Look at this closet, right? Like, haha. Were you trying to post like, oh, I love my family and we're all together and don't mind the fact that my kid has, stuff all over his face? Were you trying to sell like, hey, I'm a really good angler. See, I didn't say fisherman. I'm a really good angler. Look at this huge fish. Like, what were we trying to communicate to others? And so I asked that question. I'm just a big mess. I love that. What is it that we are trying to communicate? And so I asked kids to contemplate that before they post. What are you subtly communicating? Thoughts on, I'm just wondering if anyone has thoughts or questions about that, because this is a conversation that usually is pretty rich with kids.
I think it's an excellent conversation, and I think that it's really beneficial to help kids think beyond the post itself, as well as their own perception of what it is
Mhm.
they are looking for when it comes to posts, as well as what it is they feel like they need to take in from the post itself and then judge themselves by.
100%, right? And are you posting this because you just want a lot of like hearts and likes? Like, are you having kind of a crummy day? Is there another way that we can get that validation? And I also will ask, kids and families, is this content, whether we're posting it or viewing it, is it in alignment with my values? And there's that idea of the foot and door phenomenon, right? Like, we don't usually start our life of crime by robbing a bank, right? We normally, take a Snickers first and then maybe steal a drink, and then, we work ourselves up, right? And so I think about too, sometimes we play around like, okay, I'm going to push this just a little bit. This is maybe just a titch outside of my values, but let's pause for a minute. Is it in alignment with your values? Is that the direction you want to go? Do you want to think about it differently? Like, let's just talk about that. So what we're doing is intentional and not just mindless. And is this also enriching my life? Like, are you just like scrolling through and it's mindless? I say to kids all the time, which they hate, well, you could get a hobby. And they're like, what? I'm like, if you're just like sitting there, like you could get a hobby. They hate that, by the way. Parents are like, yes, and they're like, kids are like, no. So I also want to say that not posting is not better. Okay, so sometimes parents will say, hey, I don't mind if you're on social media, you can be on there for 45 minutes if your homework is done, whatever, that's no big deal. But listen, I just don't want you putting stuff out there. Which I would say to most parents, okay, I love that compromise. But actually, so the research actually suggests that if kids who are more active on social media, meaning that they are posting, they're liking, they're mentioning, whatever, um, have less, or how do I want to say this, have less of a likelihood of having depressive symptoms. than individuals who are just they call it passively taking in social media. So if we think about that, so if you're active, you're engaging, good, bad, otherwise, whatever, you're engaging in some way. If we're passive, we're just kind of taking it in. And often we find that that can lead to some internalized feelings about inadequacy. Tiffany, I don't know. I don't work with adults. Adults are a mystery to me. I don't know. I work with adolescents. I I've seen, oh my God. I've seen this one patient since she was 15. She's 23 now. I keep telling her, I'm like, I'm a terrible adult therapist. I'm like, I don't even know what to talk to you about. Okay. Like, I don't even know. I don't work with adults. So to answer your question, Tiffany, I don't know. My area of specialty is really like adolescents and kids. So I don't know. I would imagine it's similar, but I don't know. I don't want to pretend to know. So I would say it is not better to just be looking. That's not a better compromise. So if we're having parents set some limits, they're having honest conversations, they're tolerating their kid is mad at them because you're not letting them be on Snapchat all night long, which, a lot of times for the parents that we work with, we really have to coach them on how to tolerate their own distress, which is hard, right? And especially if parents are busy with work, with their lives, whatnot. It's like, oh my gosh, I just need to make this, go away. I can't fault parents for that. And so I try to help them build their resiliency up so they can tolerate it. So we want parents to model self-confidence and do it along with their children. So I'm moving away from social media and I'm taking it into IRL in real life. Okay, so we're going to move away from limit social media, be thoughtful about social media, to now how do we put up some protections for kids who might be vulnerable to experiencing mood symptoms related to taking in content in social media. So we're going to ask parents to really encourage their children to engage in difficult tasks and to help them persevere and overcome. And depending on the family, I had a dad last week who had had his daughter and his son help build a shed, and it was incredibly frustrating, like for everyone involved. And it ended up working out. I don't know if it's totally square, but it's functional. And like, okay, they did this together. Like they overcame these hardships. And by the way, the dad decided to do it when it was snowing. I don't know. Okay, I don't know. He's like, I guess we're gonna do this the hard way. I don't know. But we're going to do this together because what we know about self-esteem and self-confidence is that it's built when we experience some sort of hardship and we overcome it. So I ask parents to really be thoughtful about that. Um, Along with that, encouraging parents to have their kids try new things. So that also could be the difficult tasks. And I think that a lot of times kids are nervous to try something because they're not going to be good at it, right? And like, how many teenagers have I worked with? They're like, well, I can't do that. I should have started when I was 8 years old. I'm like, dude, you're like 16, okay? Like, by the way, do it. And we get there. I also ask parents to allow their kids to fail, because when we're talking about how to build up resiliency for our kids so they're less susceptible to the mental health symptoms that can be associated with social media use, what we really want is for parents to allow their kids to stumble and fall and then applaud when they step back up. I often say to parents, if you can say two things to your kids when they bring up something difficult to you, it's I I love you, and how can I help you with that? It's not I'm going to make it go away. It's I love you, and how can I help you? So then the child is saying, I don't want anything, or they're like, well, I would really love if you could call my teacher for me. And the parent says, it sounds like you really need help figuring out how to have this conversation with your teacher. I'm happy to help you write an email so that you can send it to them. Right, the parent's not going to do it. So we want our kids to experience some challenge and to overcome it. We also want to celebrate hard work. Not every kid is going to be an A student, okay? That's just the case. We want to celebrate hard work, perseverance, and grit. So I encourage parents like, hey, it's cool if your kid is like the star running back, like that's awesome. What's also awesome is your kid who's not really athletically gifted and is on the softball team and they lose every single game, but your kid is like showing up and they're going up to bat and they're striking out, but like they're still doing it. And so we really want to celebrate the effort, not necessarily the outcome. And when we think about that skill, it's a DBT skill of ABC, please. The A, the B, and the C are about like increasing our positive emotions. The A is accumulate positive experiences. The B is to build mastery. And we build mastery through doing things that are hard. So I really encourage parents to do that. I also, and by the way, kids also hate this next one, but that's okay because adults have a responsibility, right? To have kids do age appropriate household responsibilities. It gives them a sense of belonging, purpose. If you're just holed up in your room, on Roblox, like you're not contributing to the family. You're not taking care of yourself. Like in our household, like we're in this together. And so I'm going to have you help out. Like, and by the way, your future self is welcome. So we're going to build this up. You have a sense of responsibility, a sense of purpose. Also, kids are going to struggle, and we are always going to have unconditional love to kids. So it's not going to be, hey, if you do this, I'm going to be really excited for you. It's you are phenomenal. You are fantastic. I love you. I really hate that haircut, but you know what? Do you? I love you. I don't know why you have the floppy broccoli hair. I don't know why you want to get your hair permed. You're fantastic. Hate the hair. You're great. And then we also want to really cheerlead effort. So along with that, we celebrate effort and not outcome. When kids are putting in effort, we are like, you are awesome. Like I am so proud of you. Um, and then how can this be applied for our ADHD kiddos? Smaller steps. So we are going to just modify expectations and break it into smaller steps. So, hey, John, we're all going to help out with household tasks today. So you're not going to say, "Hey, John, I'd like you to clean up your room, put the dishes away, and then clean out the dog's bowl." I was like, "What?" They didn't even hear that. So we're going to do one thing at a time. "Hey, I'd like for you to clean up your room. What does that mean to you?" Da 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 da. Okay, awesome. We say that one more time. Da 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 da. Fantastic. I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes. You set a timer for 10 minutes. Check in with me with 10 minutes. So we're gonna break it down. And when your kid does those things or does part of it, you're going to be like, fan-freaking-tastic. Nice job, dude. High five. Okay, it looks like we forgot this, this, and this. Cool. Let's set a timer for 5 minutes. Let's dial this in. Awesome. So we just have to break it down and just adjust the expectation a little bit more. And that's for anyone who has any sort of developmental delay as well. And so takeaways. Okay, so social media is best consumed in small amounts. It's not all bad. We want to have parameters on it so that kids don't get out in the weeds, and the less time that they're on it, the more time they're allowed to actually be in real life. Shaping social media use can help to promote self-esteem because what we know, right? There is a relationship between the more time kids are on social media, the worse their mental health is. That's clear. Okay, this is research. This is what we know. This is not like, oh, social media is bad. That's just the reality. So we really want to shape it so that they're using social media and their phones at appropriate times. It's not impeding in their life and in small amounts. And we want, beyond all else, the best protective factor for kids' mental health, regardless of what they're doing on social media, is helping them be connected off of their devices. So if kids are busy on a team, they're probably not hanging out in the room scrolling on devices. If they can't have their phone at school, they're going to be more engaged with the people around them. So these recommendations are wildly unpopular. Wildly unpopular. Okay, so when you make these recommendations, the kids are not going to be happy. Okay, they're not going to be happy. But as the adults, again, I just want to say we have the responsibility to help keep kids safe and shape their mental health. So I'll pause there. I know I have the gift of gab. I probably said a whole lot. And if people want to go back to any of this, I'm happy to talk about it or put it into like real patient implications. And I'm also trying to stop sharing and I'm doing a terrible job. So I'm stalling. So what questions do people have?
So you are stopped sharing.
Oh, I
You're
did.
not sharing. You stopped sharing a minute ago. So I thought that you had meant to. Um,
Oh,
but
shoot.
that's
I
okay.
I
It
hope
worked
people saw
out
the
really
last
well.
few slides. Okay. There were slides that have all this written down. Thank you for being gracious with me. And I also could not have done that from memory. So, and we'll make sure you get a copy of the slides as well.
Great. I just had a question on how early should you start talking to your kids about that? Because so a lot of us have those birth to three kids, and we know that even when 2 and 3 year olds, they're on the YouTube, they're
Yep.
on the social media for whatever reason. So how do
Yep.
you, not necessarily to like other than, they want to look at all those pictures. So how do you talk to younger kids or even elementary aged kids, I
Well,
guess?
I talk with parents, right? Because they're the ones who have the responsibility, and so the intervention is really with the parents. And it's wild. Most of our elementary age kids who we work with, are on YouTube, and it actually looks like one of my slides I accidentally skipped. I have and it will be linked when you get it. There are practical guides for each of the social media outlets for parents that I have linked in this slide, which I don't know how I overlooked that. But one of the things, especially on YouTube, I ask parents to do is there's a function that you turn off autoplay, because autoplay means that whatever you just watched, then YouTube serves you up from their algorithm the next thing to watch, which can be bad news. And so I ask parents to turn that off. So with the littles, I I talk with parents about it. And then when the kids are a little bit older, I ask them, like what it is that they're looking at. Have they ever, what their feelings are about it, to try to get a sense of like, ooh, have they been exposed to things? Usually by the time kids are, like that late middle school, like middle school, late middle school, when they're getting their phones, that is when we're having these conversations, and really talking about in general internet safety, and phone safety. And there's a lot of content out there, especially on Healthy Minds, which is a division of the American Academy of Pediatrics, about safe online behavior. Because I talk a lot with the younger kids about like, you never give your name, you never give where you live, you never send picture, things like that are just kind of like basic. But Janelle, to answer your question, it's with the parents.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I don't know if anybody else has any questions or comments that they want to.
I'll ask a question.
Yeah,
You were
Please.
getting into it just right there at the end, that these suggestions as parents are not going to go over well with your teenagers. They're not going to
No.
be, accepted. So other than just holding strong and gritting your teeth and bearing through your child's hatred and yelling at you and you're the worst parent ever, do you have any
Yeah.
other strategies or suggestions for parents?
Yeah, I will also sometimes set up incentives for kids, when it comes to the weekend. And developmentally, that matters, right? A 16-year-old can wait until the weekend. An 11-year-old probably can't. They need more, they need reinforcement quicker. And so I will sometimes, with kids and parents be like, hey, this is where we're going to start. And if you're able to do like A, B, or C, you can earn some more time. And or if you can roll with this, we're going to set up some more things that you can do, outside. Like you've really wanted to, I don't know, get that soccer ball that tells you if you're kicking hard enough or whatnot. Like, hey, we're going to do that. So I would say often I will walk parents through also that extinction burst, which I think we're all, aware of. Like we're going to set these limits and it's going to get real bad. And if we pull back until we've come back down, we've just reinforced that, behavior we're trying to curb from kids. And so I will say though, some parents do not have the ability for a lot of different reasons to actually tolerate that. And so I'm not going to go this hard line with them. I'm going to start with, hey, it sounds like your child is really not getting good sleep during the night. And so let's put a parental control on so their phone goes black at 11 p.m. That's not my ideal world. I don't want phones in rooms, but sometimes we have to scale it back. So I gave you, I think, what the gold standard is, but that is not going to work for all families. So we just have to get kind of creative. Limiting time. Limiting time is the goal.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Just kind of feed off of that just a little bit with an
Yeah.
additional question. So, as you mentioned, the extinction, and sometimes that's really difficult for the parent. And so the limiting is kind of the end goal there. But, some parents, the social media or the YouTube or the screen time, that kind of thing is kind of their crutch or their survival tool when they're, especially
Absolutely.
if they're in crisis mode.
Absolutely.
Depending on, if their kids have some of those disabilities those neurodiverse disabilities that we've talked about.
Yep.
Resources that might be advantageous for parents, especially if they're trying to do that time limiting and they're just really finding that that's highly stressful. And what are alternatives for trying to move from those social media or screen times?
Yeah. Again, the Healthy Minds has, which is American Academy of Pediatrics, has some really nice recommendations as well for alternatives. Because when we think about like media use, when I think about limiting, it's really about limiting either other individuals' access to the child or the child's access to others, if that makes sense, right? And I'm not talking about just like adults who may have, a nefarious agenda, but it's just that interaction in a way that can be really really harmful. And so there's the reality that some kids they need to have some iPad time for everyone's health and well-being. And so the Lego app is a safe app. Sesame Street also has an app as well. National Geographic does as well. And so sometimes it's just replacing kind of what the actual app is with something else that has some more controls over it. We're trying to take the social part out of the media for kids' safety. And then, man, there are sometimes it's like you are just hanging on for dear life here. Like, okay, but please be watching over your kid's shoulder to see what they're looking at, because there's that reality as well.
Well, I know, did someone come off mute? I just know that we are at your time. And so I'm going to just thank you so much for this amazing presentation. It was really eye-opening to know some things that we can do as parents. And I think that even as we're working with young families, knowing that having that conversation, because eventually they grow up to be teenagers. And
Yeah, I hope it was helpful and you can find things that are applicable. And I would just say for younger kids, don't let them on social media. The user agreements are 13 anyway for all of the social media apps. So you can just say, hey, the law says you can't be on it. Sorry, don't want to break the law.
there you go.
Yeah.
That works. All right.
Thanks,
Well,
everyone. I appreciate your time.
thank you. And
Happy
now
holidays.
I am gonna have Gabby talk about her case. And so, okay, Gabby, take it away.
Okay, guys, thank you for being here today and help me with this. My name is Gabby. I work with up to 3 early intervention, so only with kids that are maximum of 3 years old. So can you pass that slide? Okay. So we had a child in the past that was in the program. Then I'm gonna call her Anna, which is not her real name. She graduated from the program and then let me start from the beginning. She has 5 siblings, and she's in foster care. So she was in the program when she was in the foster care. Then she graduated, and then now I have her brother coming and I'm helping them. But they spent in between that an year with their biological mom. So then the biological mom has a history of substance abuse, and the oldest brother went to live with the aunt, but then the other ones were placed in a foster home. So she got in this Smith family, which is also a fake name. So she started living with this family when she was 2 years old. The month, the first few months were very challenging. So she would sit at the same corner of the room for hours, too afraid to ask for anything. She felt hungry. She would try to get pieces of the carpet and eat them. She eventually received support to the Up to 3 program, and that included occupational therapists, social emotional support, speech therapists, and other services. She was diagnosed with the PTSD, and her trauma has contributed to a lot of delays and mental health disorders that some of them were diagnosed and some were not. So one of them is a selective mutism. Mutism. This is a hard word, guys. Sorry. Anxiety. And so in October 2023, she went back to the biological mother, and she had stopped using the substances, and she had a new baby. The children were so happy to return, and Anna was very excited to live with her mother. After a few months, the siblings experienced abuse again. Anna could see her baby sister pass away in the house, and their mother accused one of the older siblings for not taking good care. And then after that, she became more violent, aggressive, and Anna would see her mom trying to commit suicide. I don't know how is the right way to say this, but she attempted against her life for several times. So she is now showing a severe fear of being bitten, and she's in constant state of alert. She avoids to play and touch anything. Oh, I forgot to say that now after a year and all of that happened with her sister passing, they went back to the foster family that they were before, which is a great family. But then when she came back, she was very afraid of everything. She wouldn't touch anything. If something was asked, she would not respond. She was afraid of saying something that is not the response that the person is expecting. She is on the edge, frequently checking if she can enter the room. So then she would stand by the door and wait for the foster mom to say, "Hey, come here." So she would shut down. And then the foster family is leaving. Oh, sorry.
I was just saying, sorry, I moved forward, so.
No, that's fine. So the foster family in the living room, she would stand by the door. So then now she is 5 years old. She does not ask for food. She stands in front of her mother and keep kissing and hugging her. Her 13 years old brother believes that this behavior stems from their mother, because she would just give them food in exchange for affection. Having faced the food insecurity in their lives, Anna is fed, but she always saves some food and hides in her clothes. So she is no longer eligible for early intervention services. She turns 5 in December, which probably she already did. She's currently at the Bay River Mental Health, but the foster mother is concerned that this might not be sufficient, and she's seeking for additional age-appropriate support for Anna. It is outside of the age that I work, so I've been looking for some tips on there are some strategies or methods that could be implemented and help Anna to advocate for herself. How can the foster family create an environment that consistently reinforces Anna's sense of safety and trust? What resources or programs are available to address Anna's selective mutism and anxiety in the context of her trauma? And how can they separate physical affection from Anna's physical needs? She is attending the Bear River Mental Health, and the foster mom just feel like it's not been very age appropriate, which I don't have any more information on that. So like I said, I was doing a visit with the youngest child, and she brought up some of those things with me. I was like, I don't know, but let's find people that can help us. So this is what I am here asking help today.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We will just take the next few minutes and go over one idea from each of the breakout groups. So, Heather Waters, who on your team is?
So Heather Mitchell will report
Okay.
back. She was gracious
Okay.
enough to take notes for us.
All right, Heather Mitchell.
So our group, we talked about quite a few things, but I think the thing that we kind of kept coming back to extensively was routines and rituals. It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of continuous repetition, but the more that that's embedded in routines and consistency, the more that that will help, and it will be necessary to do so in small steps. And that will be really beneficial. And then obviously we talked about some other things that could be added to those and ways to add those that will really be of benefit to help that be more progressive over time.
Great. Thank you. JC, what about your group?
Kurt's got it covered. He's our note taker.
All right.
As soon as he figures out where that mute button is on Zoom.
Right, that's a hard one for him.
Shut up. We were talking, and we had people from Cache Valley, we had people from Washington County, so we were both ends of the state. But we talked about the family place here in Cache Valley. It has some certified play therapists and behavioral training and that sort of thing. Also talked about speech therapy to help with the question about resources available to help with the selective mutism and anxiety. With regard to the question about the physical affection and needs for food, we just talked a lot about the importance of making sure that Anna feels safe where she's at, that she feels like she can get food without consequence, that she doesn't have to be affectionate, doesn't have to do anything, that she can just have it so it doesn't become this obstacle where she feels like I've got to do something for that food. Also the importance of supporting the foster parents, helping them recognize that even though this behavior may not go away completely or quickly, that their best efforts are going to help Anna in the long run. So just making sure that we're supporting her needs, but also supporting the needs of those parents that are putting a lot of time and effort into it.
Great, great, thank you. So if you will all send in your notes to the time to act at aggies.usu.edu, we will compile those and get those sent to Gabby after we get those all compiled. They will be also on our Canvas page, so if anybody that is on the call wants to go back and look at some of those resources, for kids that you're working with, you can always do that. And then just to remind you that our next session is going to be in January 15th. We are going to be having Brittany Bird from the Family Place talk to us about ongoing trauma. So enjoy your holidays and hopefully we'll see you in January. Thank you all.